So is this you this week? I know, right? It's kind of crazy. Well, if you were enjoying this build this past week in Diablo 4, as you probably know already, Blizzard is going to be nerfing it really soon. So this week, and I'm still playing, I'm talking about Diablo 4's broken evade build and why Blizzard has to nerf it. I mean, fix it. And they really do. So if you're like me, trudging along in Diablo 4, finishing the campaign and just doing Hell Tides, you may not even been aware that this build existed. But if while you were playing, you suddenly experienced some really terrible lag spikes, or maybe even saw 10 or 15 seconds go by between receiving one update from the server and the next, you've definitely felt the effects of this build being played in your area. I'm not going to go into the build in great detail. There are a ton of other videos out there that are doing exactly that. But suffice it to say that you were able to set the build up in such a way that you could spam evade endlessly with no cooldown and do a truck ton of damage moving around the map while you were doing so. So Blizzard has in fact confirmed that this is an issue. It's causing problems. Let's take a look at exactly what they said. Just a quick update on some plans. We will have some additional client patches and hotfixes coming out this week. Some possibly as early as this afternoon, evening. They will be on some crash-related items and some of the hot button items from the weekend. We also looked at the Spiritborn's evade cast animations and some are employing in specific builds. This is a bug, as the Spiritborn was able to break animation frames during evade immediately. We will be fixing this so you won't be able to evade instantly during another one, and instead it will be normalized by the standard evade cast rate in all situations. The reason why we're hitting this bug now, and some may have noticed, is that it's currently impairing other players and their experience in game. We have mentioned before that if a build ends up impacting the experience of others, we may make changes immediately, and this is one of those instances. We expect this change to come in 2.0.3 later this week. So the key thing there is that second paragraph, right? The part where they talk about evade being able to interrupt itself while you're casting and how they're going to normalize the cast time for evade. So what does that mean exactly? Well, in order to answer that, I want to talk a little bit about cooldowns. So if you've ever played any RPG, well, ever, you know what cooldowns are, right? They're the amount of time that has to elapse between one usage of an ability and another usage of that same ability. And in fact, oftentimes we refer to the longest, most powerful abilities that have long cooldowns just as cooldowns. We'll say, like in a tanking guide, you need to blow your defensive cooldowns here, or in a DPS guide, you need to blow your offensive cooldowns here because this is a DPS check. And in fact, some MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft have global cooldowns, which means that once you press an ability that's on the global cooldown, or GCD, all abilities on the GCD are not available for use until that cooldown has elapsed. And then that in turn allows for other powerful abilities that are instant cast that are off the GCD that allow you to interleave them into your rotation. So I'm digressing just a little bit, but the point is that cooldowns are an extremely important tool for designers to balance a game. But there is another purpose for cooldown, especially in a server-based game, and that is command metering. Because every time you press a key in Diablo 4, you're essentially just sending a command to the server, right? And as a result of sending that single one command, the server is probably resolving hundreds of outcomes. I mean, mobs are taking damage. Mob AI has to respond to that damage and run the little fellas away. Particle effects have to be triggered. And all of that information has to be broadcast to any other players in the area so that in turn, their clients can show the mobs dying and show all the blood spattering and the pretty particle effects. So cooldowns, as it turns out, limit the frequency with which you can send those commands. And that turns out to be pretty useful for server health, right? And player enjoyment in turn. Many MMOs, though, have another cooldown that's kind of different. And that is the cooldown of just playing the animation for this ability. So the notion is that once you start the animation for an ability, you can't stop it, and you're not going to do anything else until that animation stops playing. City of Heroes, back in the day, it did this. Once you started an ability, you could not play another ability, and you could spam that ability bar until your fingers bled, but nothing else was going to happen until the ability that you just cast finished its animation. But in a really fast-paced MMO like Diablo 4 here, you don't want that. You want the game to feel very responsive. And so you want players to be able to interrupt their existing abilities. If I begin an evade, it's important for me, if I then hit my ultimate, that my ultimate goes off right away and it doesn't wait until the end of the evade. So that's why this is actually technically not a bug, because I can guarantee you that Blizzard 100% intended for evade to be interruptible by other abilities. What they didn't expect was have to account for the situation where evade could be piled on top of itself, and that they would have to prevent evade from interrupting itself. So right now, with certain setups, you can make a build in such a way that evade has no cooldown, and you can play it. It can be spammed just as fast as you can press a button. In fact, it's actually worse than that because people are putting evade on mouse wheel or putting it on the thumbstick on their controller, or worse yet, sending up macros to spam evade 3 times a second. Now imagine this. Imagine you're spamming evade to the server 3 times every second. And for every one of those evades, the player is resolving all of the hundreds of effects that have to be resolved from a result of that command. Now imagine 5 or 10 of you all doing that at the same time in the same area. As you can imagine, it's literally throttling the responsiveness of the server. And so other players like me who are just running around trying to finish our campaign or do this Helltide, they're literally not able to get any responses from the server because the server is being throttled by the constant spam of evades. And that's really pretty much it in a nutshell. So does it suck? Well, I mean, in the short term, sure, if you're using that build and enjoying running around trivializing content. But look, this build is broken, and it was trivializing content. And as anyone who's ever farmed frogs in Timeless Isle can tell you, while it's great to feel overpowered for a while, soon enough it becomes really boring. And Blizzard doesn't want you getting bored with the game. And more importantly, what they really don't want is for you to ruin the experience of other players because they can't get responses from the server because your broken build is spamming the server with endless commands. So yeah, they're going to fix it, and it's actually best for the game that they do. So that's going to be it for tonight. Tomorrow is MechWarrior Clans, and I'm really excited for that game. So do join me on Sunday, as I'm sure I'll have plenty to talk about regarding that game. In the meantime, enjoy your broken build if you still can, and whatever you're doing, have a great time at it, and I'll see you soon.